Hi, Adam Meyer, Golden Harvest Agronomist, covering Northeast Iowa and Southeast Minnesota. Today I'm in a recently planted cornfield to evaluate that most important pass that we'll make over the field in a given year in that planter pass. So we're really trying to evaluate how the pass went, what kind of soil conditions we had, and then what kind of ramifications or long-term effects that pass will have for the rest of the season. So there's multiple things that we want to look at. When you look at what the planter does, we know that it has some sort of a cleaning system on the front of it to clear debris. Then we have the furrow creation with the gauge wheels and the opening discs, and some sort of a closing system that gives us that furrow destruction on the back end of that planter. So one of the first things I like to do after we have a good furrow opened up and identified where the seeds were in fact placed is seeding depth. So seeding depth is one of the most important aspects when we talk uniformity and making sure that we're in a constant environment for that seed from a moisture and temperature standpoint, as well as giving us those good season-long agronomics. So we really want to evaluate to make sure that that seeding depth was at the targeted depth, and that every seed is at that targeted depth. So if we have some variation on the depth between seeds, we know that there was probably some planter chatter or some bouncing as we're going across the field. Maybe that cleaning system wasn't doing a good enough job to give us a nice ride for those gauge wheels, or maybe there were some other factors there that were creating that bounce. But either way, we really want to have that uniformity in that planting depth. And the next thing I like to look at is the spacing, and understand that we're looking for a nice uniform stand from a plant growth aspect as well as a plant spacing aspect to allow maximum yield potential for each individual plant in that situation. So I have a nice measuring tool that I'm able to get about 6 inches in between each seed spacing here, which is pretty close to what our ideal target at 34,000 for this individual environment was the target. One of the other things that I really like to look for as we have that furrow open is how defined is that furrow after planting. It's really important that we have good furrow creation so that that seed falls to the bottom of the furrow to get that uniformity, but we don't want too much down pressure on those gauge wheels that creates compaction on each side of that furrow to maintain that furrow longer into the season than just for planting the seed. If we have too much downforce or pressure on those gauge wheels, we can create compaction on the sides, which you can probe to feel that there's not a lot in this situation, but if we have too much downforce, we can create a nice hard pan there that will create issues with us from a potential standability problem. Will mohawk your roots as we keep that furrow in place, and the roots are not able to penetrate through that sidewall, and that will create a lack of a rooting environment in that situation. On the other end of the spectrum, if we come and do some evaluations and we see that that uniformity isn't there and it was really dry and crumbly, we might not have had enough pressure to create a good furrow where the seeds didn't make it all the way to the bottom of the furrow because that furrow was collapsing before the seed was able to get to the bottom of the furrow. So then you had differences in uniformity in that depth, and then you're going to have differences in uniformity with moisture as well, because that dry dirt is going to come in contact with the seed, and then after the fact you'll have dry dirt next to a seed. Thanks for spending time with Golden Harvest Agronomy, and we'll catch you next time.